Wells of Silence by TheBeckster, Chapter 23. The garrison was filled with a sort of tense ease as troopers moved to prepare for their mission. There was no urgency and certainly no panic, just rapid efficiency with an underlying current of curiosity. They didn't have any specific orders yet. They just had to be prepared to move out when the call came in. Rex never particularly liked this part of a mission, waiting for orders from high command. He'd rather just get his orders and go as soon as his men were ready. He finished restocking his ammo belt and moved to check his blasters. He'd done this countless times. It was automatic, and yet he was no less meticulous. He breathed a long sigh through his nose and let his mind wander to more pressing matters. It had been 3 weeks since their return to Coruscant. 3 weeks since they had been rotated to the city planet rather than bouncing around the outer rim. It was unusual, but not unheard of. Usually, every regiment got a week or two of light duty in between long stretches of outer rim campaigns. They were due this break. They had been gone for almost 5 months, not counting a 2-day rest 6 weeks ago. Still, they hadn't been assigned a new commander yet, and that was highly irregular. General List hadn't survived the attack on Coruscant, and he had been their temporary substitute for Skywalker. Rex often wondered if they were biding their time until General Skywalker could return to them, but he hadn't heard anything from anyone in command. He hadn't heard any news of Skywalker for months, not since she had been taken off active duty for some mysterious reason. She'd been gone nearly 6 months, doing who knew what with the Chancellor. From Rex's point of view, it looked like a lot of lurking behind the Chancellor while he held meetings and had press conferences. Then suddenly, the remerge into battle to rescue the Chancellor, and then like a ghost she disappeared again. What happened to her? Why did she leave so suddenly and with no explanation? She had promised to tell him the story after the Chancellor had been rescued, but then she never showed up at the barracks. It was more than a little strange. Skywalker treated her troops like friends, and her disappearing like this, not even a hesitantly scrawled message on a scrap of flimsy for an explanation, was more than a little suspicious. The official story was that she was sent on a secret mission regarding the Chancellor. That was the most they were told. And it smelled a lot like Banthish. To him. No secret mission should be running so publicly for 6 months. Nor would Skywalker ever volunteer for an assignment that would keep her off the front lines and away from her troops for more than a month or two. And if she had been placed there to protect the Chancellor, then she clearly hadn't done her job 3 weeks ago. So where had she been? Injured? Reassigned? A mental breakdown? It was possible. Over nearly 4 years of war, Skywalker had hardly allowed herself to break, even when they were supposed to be on R&R. She somehow always got herself into trouble. Rex. The clone turned, smiling, toward the familiar voice. He saluted sharply. General Skywalker, it's good to see you. I'm glad to see you too, Rex. Anakin smiled, but it was tight and didn't reach her eyes. How are things? We're almost ready, General. We can be fully mobilized within the hour. Good. Anakin's eyes licked around the barracks with a cursory, almost uninterested glance. Rex thought he read a little weariness in her eyes and posture. "Come with me, Rex. I have a special assignment for you." "Yes, General." He made no comment as Anakin led him out of the barracks and into a speeder. Anakin was silent too, walking with her head bowed, as if she was trying to avoid drawing attention. He couldn't quite blame her. If there was a special mission at hand, time couldn't be wasted by the rest of the 501st stopping to welcome her back. Then again, it wasn't like Skywalker to ignore her men. As they walked, Rex noticed the slightest hitch in her step, a barely noticeable limp. He studied her even more carefully. Had she been seriously injured? Anakin was a very popular war hero. She was the poster girl of the Grand Army of the Republic. It would make sense if the higher-ups had decided to keep Anakin's injury under wraps. Public support was waning as the war ground on. They needed every bit of good press they could get. There was something different about her, something intangible and unidentifiable. There was something in the tight muscle of her jaw and the hollowness of her eyes that he had never seen before. Something more than just a bad injury had happened to General Skywalker during her absence. Rex couldn't begin to guess what it was. He was confused, but he was a good soldier. He trusted the general, and he would follow her orders. As they approached a tall, luxury apartment building, he finally spoke. May I ask what this assignment is, General?" "Protective detail." Rex furrowed his brow. "General, with all due respect, protection is best left to private security. I belong with my troops." "You're the only one I can trust for this, Rex." She said it so softly, almost desperately. Rex had never heard her like that, and it only made his concern grow. Anakin stopped the speeder at a wide, richly decorated veranda on the top floor. She walked over to a keypad and typed in a code, displaying the security screen. Rex followed quietly through the darkened, apparently empty apartment. Anakin led him to a closed door, and then with only a moment of hesitation, she opened it. Rex was surprised, to say the least. He had not expected to step into a nursery. Senator Anidala was there. That explained whose apartment this was, and he rocked an infant in a chair. Things in the nursery seemed to come in twos. 2 cribs, 2 hanging mobiles, 2 chairs, 2 of everything. Anakin walked over to a crib, leaned over, and lifted out a second infant. "Anakin, what's going on?" Padme asked, rising to his feet as soon as he saw Rex. "I'll explain in a minute, Padme," she muttered. "How are they?" "They're fine, Anakin." Padme smiled tenderly down at the infants. Rex stood back by the door, putting the pieces together. This explained the general's sudden absence from the war. She had children with the senator. He'd had a feeling that there was something going on between the two, but having children together wasn't something he ever expected from the general. All of a sudden, he remembered that odd conversation he had with Cody several weeks back. Skywalker's mystery assignment had come up, and Cody mentioned a few preposterous rumors, including Anakin being pregnant. Cody knew he had been trying to tell Rex. How had Cody known about this, but he hadn't? Anakin finished her cursory inspection of her child and turned to Rex. She may have just been giving the infant a tender smile, but her face, as hard as steel, when she met his eyes. He found himself standing a little straighter just at that look alone. "Rex, these are my children, Luke and Leia. I brought you here to protect them." "Protect them?" Padme cut in, holding the baby in his arms a little closer. "Anakin, what's going on?" Anakin didn't answer him. She stared intently into Rex's eyes. Nobody comes near them, save for myself or Padme. Do you understand, Rex? I understand, General. Anakin nodded solemnly. She turned away and gently placed a kiss on the child in her arms before lowering them into the crib. Then she took the child from Padme and did the same. She took Padme's hand and led him from the room, pausing briefly at the door. Protect them, Rex. With my life, General. The vow passed his lips before he could really process it, but as soon as he said it, he knew it would be true. Anakin nodded but said nothing. She shared a significant look with Padme before leading him fully out of the room. Rex waited in the nursery watching the twins sleep. Something was very wrong. Something big was about to happen. He could feel it, and it wasn't right being here. He should be with his brothers. This wasn't right. None of it was. The unknown marching orders, the general's strange behavior, her children. Rex could practically hear his inner alarms blaring. But Rex has his orders, and he'd be damned if he wasn't going to do as General Skywalker asked. After several minutes, Padme came back. His face was strained, his jaw clenched tight. Rex thought he might have seen a little red in his eyes. They'll be asleep for a while. You don't have to stand and watch them sleep if you don't want to. Rex followed the senator back out to the sitting room. The holonet was on. An attractive woman was giving a report quietly in the background. Rex half listened to her while Padme's service droid bustled around, eager to help his master in any way possible. At least he seemed happy. In the background noise of the news report, Rex caught General Grievous's name. He tuned into the report, wondering how much the public knew of the droid general yet. They only know half the story, Rex grumbled as the reporter transitioned seamlessly from a grim report on the war to a tabloid story of some Nautolan singer. That's the holonet for you. They'll be teasing the full story all night. Suspense sells. Padme glared at the reporter, as if she had personally offended him, as she wrapped up the tabloid story with a forced joke and laugh with her co-host. At that moment, the protocol droid came shuffling back from the kitchen bearing a tray with 2 steaming cups of tea. Rex didn't remember asking for or being offered a drink, but he also knew the droid wouldn't rest until he had served the senator's guest. He looked down at the weak brown liquid while Padme dismissed the droid. He'd never really been a tea drinker. In fact, given the circumstances, he'd really rather have something a lot stronger. Apparently, Padme shared his sentiments. The senator waited until the droid had shuffled out of the room before setting his cup aside. I need a drink, he declared. He walked over to a side table where several decanters were sitting. Rex watched him pour 2 sizable glasses of deep amber liquor. You read my mind, Rex commented as Padme handed him a glass. He and Padme both took long drinks. So what is the whole story with Grievous? Padme asked after a quiet minute. The holonet thinks he's still alive. Grievous is dead. General Kenobi dropped the big tin can himself. Good. And the casualties? Not as bad as they could have been. Well, here's to the end of the war. Padme half-heartedly raised his glass before taking another drink. Rex followed suit. An awkward silence fell between them. Padme appeared to turn his attention back to the holonet. Several minutes passed with nothing but the noise of the net filling the silence. What do you plan on doing after the war, Rex? Rex blinked, pausing with his glass halfway to his lips. Nobody had ever really asked him that before. The closest he ever got to thinking like that was when he was a cadet and one squad mate had asked their Kaminoan trainer What would happen to them if the war they were training for never happened? The Kaminoan's response was quick and dismissive. It wasn't a clone's place to think about after the war. He was a soldier created for one purpose. No war, no purpose. I suppose if the Republic will have me, I'll continue serving until this body gives out in another 20 years or so. 20 years? That isn't much time. Rex shrugged and lowered his glass. Part of being a clone, sir. We age fast. The knowledge that he'd only live a few decades had never really bothered Rex. He had known since day one that his life would be a short one. The Kaminoans had been abundantly clear about that. Clones weren't meant to last very long. What do you plan on doing after the war, Senator? I'm retiring, Padme declared with finality. I'm tired of the politics. I'm taking my family back to Naboo where we can be left alone for a while. And the general will be able to get away with that? Padme laughed once bitterly. Anakin can do whatever she wants now. I don't follow, Senator. Padme looked at Rex, confused and concerned. They didn't tell you? Tell us what? Anakin's not a Jedi anymore. Or a general. What? Why? Well, a Jedi can't be secretly married and have children, now can they? Padme slugged back the remainder of his liquor. Anakin hasn't officially been expelled yet. Turns out there aren't enough council members on Coruscant for a full trial, and I think they wanted to keep her involved in the war with it being so close to the end. Never mind the fact that she's the mother of month-old twins who need her, but... He released a soft sigh. There's no denying her prowess. Padme trailed off and raised his glass to his lips, forgetting he had just finished his drink. It was obvious the senator had mixed feelings about his wife's involvement in the war, particularly given her newly revealed motherhood. But Rex could tell that this resentment ran longer than that. They both knew the two sides of Anakin Skywalker. There was a kind and passionate Jedi Anakin, and there was War Anakin. War Anakin was a powerful warrior and cunning general. War Anakin was ruthless. She was cold and calculating. Everything was black or white. She acted first, she acted quickly, and she had no regrets. Rex respected that side of Anakin. Her husband clearly didn't care for it. Padme got up and walked back to the sidebar. He refilled his glass, then after a moment of thought, he picked up the whole decanter and brought it back to the couch. They passed the time in relative uneasy silence, half paying attention to the HoloNet, slowly emptying the decanter. Most of the emptying being done by Padme. The sun set. The HoloNews repeated the same stories. Padme took care of his children when they woke from their nap. He properly introduced the children while their bottles were heating up, and enlisted Rex's help when he needed a second set of hands, despite Rex's protests. Senator, I'm really not sure. I just keep supporting his head, Rex. You're not going to hurt him. Easier said than done, Rex thought as he looked down at the baby in his arms. Luke had yet to start howling for food like his sister, but he was apparently enjoying a rousing game of how much can I squirm before I get dropped. And it made Rex very uncomfortable. Babies were too fragile. There was a reason the Kaminoans left clones in their gestation tubes until their bones were set and strengthened. These kids still had soft spots. Why did their skulls have soft spots? That was the exact opposite of what skulls were supposed to have. Rex suppressed a groan when Luke decided he was hungry as well and took up wailing. Fortunately, he was soothed, and Rex's ears saved quickly as the bottles had warmed up. Here, Padme said, pressing a bottle into Rex's hand. They'll be happier if they eat together. Just do what I do and you'll be fine. Rex somehow managed to awkwardly shift Luke into the proper position, and he mirrored the senator's actions. The baby happily took the bottle, while his sister seemed to require a little more coaxing. He must like you, Padme commented once he got Leia to latch and begin eating. Usually Luke doesn't like the bottles. An involuntary grimace passed Rex's face as his brain immediately conjured for the alternative to the bottle. I did not need that to picture that, Senator, he muttered as a shudder ran up his spine. At that moment, he was eternally grateful that none of his brothers or any Jedi were present to witness this. Padme snickered a little deviously. Sorry, but consider yourself lucky that you aren't in Obi-Wan's shoes. He was here for the birth. Rex knew it was supposed to be funny, but he could only feel a stab of sympathy for General Kenobi. He would rather face Grievous alone than have to see General Skywalker like that. He'd have to switch units out of shame. He'd never be able to look General Skywalker in the eye after witnessing her in such a situation. After a couple minutes, Rex had tentatively decided that this whole feeding thing wasn't too terrible. It was easy enough. Hold the kid, keep the bottle in his mouth until he drank it all. No sweat. And then Luke stopped drinking about halfway through and Rex couldn't get him to take the bottle again. Oh, here, Padme said, taking notice of the current predicament. Switch with me. He's got a little reflex. I won't make you get spit up on your armor. Yeah, what, sir? Rex asked, somewhat confused as Padme managed to take Luke from his arms, move Leia into Rex's arms, and flip a towel over over his shoulder in one smooth motion. Padme lifted Luke up to his shoulder and began patting his back. Rex wasn't entirely sure what that was supposed to accomplish. After a minute, there was a soft hiccuping noise, and Padme grimaced a bit. Thanks for that, kiddo, he muttered under his breath as he settled his son back into his arms again. Rex eyed the new white stain on the towel, and then the remnants of the baby's chin, and oh, yep, that settled it. Babies were officially gross. Fortunately, the rest of the twins' dinner passed without many more incidents. Rex gratefully handed Leia over to her father when Padme asked. The senator disappeared for a few minutes with the twins, presumably to settle them down and find a clean shirt. Rex moved back out to the sitting room and kept his eyes open for any approaching threats. Skywalker wasn't prone to paranoia. If she thought her family was in danger, then something was probably coming. Senator, Rex called out. His eyes had caught something at the distant Jedi temple, flames and smoke. Padme hurried into the room and to the window. Anakin, he gasped, blanching at the sight. She was at the temple. Rex turned to watch the senator. He saw something going on behind his eyes. A fierce determination settled into his brow. He knew what was coming. We have to go get her. Rex's response was ready. I'm afraid I can't let you do that, Senator. He put a hand on Padme's shoulder and held him in place. I have my orders. You can protect me at the temple, Padme protested. And what about your children? Skywalker brought me here to protect them. She knew it was safe here for all three of you. Padme fell still, and Rex released his shoulder. If she's at the temple, then she must have suspected this would happen. She's a highly capable Jedi, but she can't defend the temple if she's worried about you too. Padme bowed his head in defeat. There are children in the temple, he added, but Rex couldn't be sure if it was a final attempt at convincing him or some paternal instinct. I'm sure her first priority will be to protect them. She is a mother. Padme started slightly as one of the twins started crying again. He looked between the burning temple and back toward the nursery. Go, Senator. Take care of them. Try and get some sleep. I will keep an eye out for Skywalker. Padme muttered some thanks to Rex and took off for the nursery. The clone doubted the senator would get any sleep until Anakin was back safe. Even if he had the time or opportunity, he doubted he'd sleep either. Truthfully, the senator and the children were the only things keeping him in this apartment rather than tearing his own way across the city to help where he could at the temple. Maybe this was what the 501st had been gearing up for. Perhaps some intelligence had come through about an attack on the Jedi Temple. Somehow Rex knew in his gut that his brothers were over there. And he wasn't. He couldn't. He had to follow Skywalker's orders. End of chapter.